Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another video with the American Stroke Foundation. My name is Chaz Trujillo, and I'm a second-year occupational therapy student at the University of Kansas Medical Center. Today, we'll be discussing intimacy. In my opinion, it's a topic that's not brought up enough because it's either thought of as taboo, people feel uncomfortable discussing it, or it's completely misunderstood. However, intimacy plays a large role in our lives. It impacts our health, our mind, our happiness, and more than anything else, our relationships with a spouse, partner, or loved one. Whichever term you use, intimacy is one of the building blocks of a relationship. Too often, intimacy is thought of or used interchangeably with sex. Yes, sexual activity can be intimate, but you can have intimacy without having sex. As we know, life after stroke can be different in many ways, including our relationships with our partners. Sometimes it's changes for the better, sometimes not so much. A study about sexuality and intimacy by Kathy Neepman and Stephanie Kerr found 4 common themes from stroke survivors' partners related to their relationship. They are 1, maintaining a closeness and togetherness, 2, redefining sexuality and intimacy after stroke, 3, coping with the lack of resources, and 4, wishing healthcare professionals would discuss this topic. I bring this up because there is definitely a need to address these themes moving forward. As a healthcare student and advocate, I believe the first step in coming up with a solution is to educate this topic to the public, to all of those who are watching this video. So let's get into it. Today we'll be discussing what intimacy is, how stroke impacts intimacy, the different types of intimacy, and the dynamic for partners who are also caregivers. Before we get into the content, I want to challenge you to pause the video and do your best to define intimacy. Think about the things that you do with your partner currently that can be considered intimate. When I think about intimacy, I think about the definition as a bond, trust, love, and respect. One thing that comes to mind that I do with my partner is going on daily walks with our dogs. Sometimes we hold hands, so there's a physical aspect, and sometimes we just walk in silence and occasionally smile at each other. Small things like this can be considered intimate, depending on your definition and what you believe. So now we'll get into what is intimacy. Simply put, intimacy is a feeling of close familiarity or friendship, a closeness between two people. As we talked about earlier, intimacy isn't all about sex. So now that we have a formal definition, let's move on to some of the changes that we may experience after stroke. Each stroke is different and unique to each individual, but there are common experiences that can negatively impact intimacy after stroke. Communication can become more difficult. It may take us longer to get our point across. Maybe we're not sure what we want to say, or if we have aphasia, then maybe we know what we want to say, but we don't have the words to say it. Without the communication piece, we can't let our partners know our needs, wants, and desires, and that can be very crucial in being intimate. Next, you may experience emotional changes. You may feel sad, depressed, frustrated, angry, upset, and thoughts and feelings of intimacy may take a back seat. Maybe you experience pseudo-bulbar effect, which are uncontrollable episodes of laughter or crying. And that could be a cause for concern because our emotions, our outward emotions, aren't matching the situation at hand. Lack of self-esteem can occur if we feel like we can't perform or we're no longer confident in ourselves, and that just leads to us giving up. And closely related with self-esteem is body image. Um, Individuals may feel self-conscious about the way they feel or look after a stroke. They may feel that their partners are no longer attracted to them and give up trying to be intimate. Another change could be loss of mobility in an arm or leg. Along with that comes lack of strength and endurance. Maybe the individual becomes too tired or is too fatigued to engage in certain intimate activities. And lastly, survivors of stroke may experience incontinence, which can harbor feelings of embarrassment, and they may shy away from opportunities to be intimate with their partner. I mention these changes so that we can be aware what may be impacting you, a friend, or a partner from being intimate. I have to say that this list is quite small, and there's probably some things that I missed. But remember, if you're not sure what's going on, make sure you ask your partner or you explain to your partner what's going on. Okay, so now that we've talked about the definitions and changes that you may experience, we'll talk about the 5 different types of intimacy. Yes, there are 5 different types. And throughout the rest of the PowerPoint, we'll distinguish each kind. We'll go over an example, and we'll talk about ways to practice that specific intimacy. So starting out, we've got emotional intimacy. This can be thought of as sharing thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Telling your partner your fears, ambitions, and complexities can all be considered emotional intimacy. And of course, doing this in a safe, trusting space. So for example, after a close friend passes away, you confide in your partner that you are deeply sad and fearful about your own future. So some ways that we can practice our emotional intimacy are sharing emotions and experiences more often, asking questions what your partner thinks or how they feel, and lastly, listen instead of recommending advice. We all want to be heard, and that gives each other an opportunity to say what they want and feel. Next on the list is experiential intimacy. This can be described as shared experiences between 2 individuals or doing activities together. You can also think of this as working towards a common goal. So our short example of experiential intimacy is that a couple decides to buy tickets to a comedy show together. The next week, they reminisce and laugh about a few jokes they remember. So thinking back to the definition, this is a shared experience at the comedy show, and then they can share those inside jokes for the rest of their lives. Some ways that we can practice this kind of intimacy is to try new things together. We can schedule a weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly date, and this is going to be whatever your time constraints are or your financial budget is, and that's going to be unique to you. But as long as we try and schedule something, that's a step in the right direction. And the last thing that you can try is to do each other's favorite hobbies. Maybe one of you really enjoys sewing and the other enjoys gardening. Well, one day you can spend time sewing together, and then the next day you guys can spend time in the garden pulling weeds or planting new flowers. Okay, on to the next one, intellectual intimacy. So this is communicating your beliefs and viewpoints while respecting your partner's opinions and values. And this is all done without anger or argumentation. You respect your partner's opinions and values if they're different from yours. And here's a quick example. A new law is passed in your county. You discuss the pros and cons with your partner. You each have differing viewpoints. You ask questions to understand their reasoning instead of telling them why you're right. Asking your questions makes sure that you are validating what they think is okay and you respect it. There's nothing worse than talking about something you really believe in, only to have someone come in and trash what you think just because it's different from theirs. So some things that you can try to practice your intellectual intimacy are having conversations about different perspectives. During this time, you'll have to make a conscious effort to ask questions and try to understand your partner. Another thing that you can do is research and discuss a new interesting topic together. Maybe there's something you're both interested in but don't know much about. Well, maybe you spend 20 or 30 minutes each researching that topic, and then you come back together and talk about what you learned. The last thing that you can try is to teach each other something only one of you knows. So for instance, maybe one of you knows how to propagate a houseplant and the other person knows how to cross stitch. So one day, maybe your partner teaches you how to propagate a plant, and then afterwards, they teach you how to cross stitch. Okay, here's some information about spiritual intimacy. Spirituality means different things to different people. So this one is a little bit more abstract and unique to each person. This can be described as connecting on a deep, profound level, a shared experience that's difficult to explain. And this can also include religious practices. So the example I have here is two partners wake up early every Friday and make a pot of coffee. They turn on their favorite jazz band and enjoy music. They don't speak a word to each other, but share the enjoyment of being together. So in this example, we can take away that the couple is just enjoying the moments together. And here's some ways that we can practice our spiritual intimacy. You can watch the sunrise or sunset with each other. This can be done in the comfort of your own home or apartment. You can sit on the porch, or maybe even enjoy it in the park. Another thing that we can do together is pray and worship. Maybe you attend your service on a Saturday or Sunday and you bring your partner along with you. And the last thing you can try is to enjoy nature together. Maybe there's a walking trail near your apartment or house and you walk or roll together down the path. All right, moving on to physical intimacy. This is the one that most people think of most often. This can be thought of as engaging in physical touch with a partner or loved one. Sensual and sexual activities are included. So here's a quick example of physical intimacy. A couple gets home from a date. They hold hands as they walk to the door. Once inside, they share a few kisses in the privacy of their own home. One partner is not in the mood for sexual activities, but recommends a massage instead. So in this short story, we have a few examples of sexual and sensual aspects of physical intimacy. So if you feel like you're lacking in this area of intimacy, you can try to take turns giving massages and while using lotions or oils. Holding hands, cuddling, or hugging can also be a way to build a physical, intimate bond. And lastly, if you've got some spasticity or less range of motion, decreased strength and endurance, you can always try new positions or positions that are comfortable for you during sex. Okay, so now that we've got the 5 different types of intimacy covered, which are emotional, experiential, intellectual, spiritual, and physical, let's move on to some information about being a partner and a caregiver. If you find yourself in this position, the intimacy line may be blurred. It can be difficult to go back and forth from one role to another. It can be even confusing. First of all, you share multiple layers of intimacy. An example would be that you're on a date with your partner and you need to help them use the restroom. Don't let this change your special moment or your plans. Just try your best to see past the bathroom breaks, because chances are your spouse or partner feels ashamed, awkward, or bad for potentially ruining the moment. When in actuality, we all have to use the restroom at some inopportune time. As a dual role, it's important to have open lines of communication. You can provide that safe space for your partner to talk about the thoughts and feelings that they have. If your spouse has aphasia, you can try asking yes or no questions about intimate preferences. The least you can do is bring it up. As a result of stroke, many things change, and so can we. The way that you're intimate now may be different from what you're used to before. We can change the ways we were intimate with each other before to fit our new relationship. You can help set boundaries and try new things to figure out what works best for you and your partner now. You may feel uncomfortable or awkward switching between roles, and I believe that's normal. As you adapt and change and talk about it more often, you'll be more comfortable bringing up the topic. Our last point here is to practice and be consistent. Relationships take a lot of work. It takes effort from both individuals in the relationship. And if you feel like it's being one-sided, don't be afraid to ask what's going on or bring it up. So let's wrap up here and hit our conclusion points. First, I just want to say that there are no perfect answers out there. What works for one person or a couple may not work for another. However, I do believe that some of the suggestions we went over can be a great start to building intimacy with your partner. Secondly, I want you all to know that you're not alone in feeling the way you do about intimacy with your partner after a stroke. Often, we don't bring up this topic in conversation because it may be awkward or embarrassing, but it just really seems that way. There are many online forums or online support groups that discuss this topic. Thirdly, emotional and mood changes play a role in our ability to be intimate. It will take some time to understand and accept our feelings before redefining intimacy. Redefining intimacy can give us a fresh start, create new sparks in our relationships. Again, this isn't going to happen overnight, but consistent practice and effort from both partners is a journey that you'll share together. Really, intimacy evolves and changes over time with any individual. Lastly, and most importantly, talk about it. Discuss your thoughts, questions, feelings, and concerns. Nobody is a mind reader. And the more we discuss these topics that are considered taboo, like sexuality and intimacy, the more comfortable we will feel bringing it up later with other people. And that's all I've got for today. So if you've got any questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments below. You can shoot us an email at the American Stroke Foundation, or you can bring your concerns or questions up during our online programming throughout the week. So here are the resources that I used to create my PowerPoint that we went over today. And lastly, I just want to thank you guys for tuning in, and be sure to like the video and check out our website, our Facebook and Instagram pages for more information.